Hello, this is Franco Cabral broadcasting from the Honest Liar podcast, a conversation around finding the inner liar within all of us and leveraging the truth to create expansion across all areas of your life. Today's topic is financially exposed again. As I mentioned to you guys in the last podcast, Winning the War, I created some space to be in a Mastermind quarterly event, and I created some targets for this upcoming quarter based on where I truly was in each of my domains, body, being, balance, and business. So today I started the process to begin tackling my balance target. My balance target for this quarter was to create a budget monthly meeting with my wife where we went over all of our finances, we created a budget, and we had full transparency across all of our finances, which is not something that we've ever had. And we've had moments where we've created a budget, usually out of scarcity because we were building the business and we needed to figure out how to make it through the initial phases, but never from a place of creation. And I realized as I was doing my targets that there was a lot of pain and fear around budgeting with my wife. And it was coming from many different angles. But it first started just from realizing, what are the facts, as I said, and what are the feelings associated in my relationship. And I want to get to the next place. So I exposed myself and realizing that there's a lot of pain and stories that I have around money and the joining of full transparency around our finances with my wife. Now, I also know that what I want very clearly is I want to have an even deeper connection with my wife. And over the process of expansion that I've been on over the last 18, 24 months, I realized that the way to create expansion and build trust with my wife is through security and safety. So this is a new game that I am working on figuring out, and by no means do I have figured out, but it's part of my quarter 4 challenge. And I realized that, number one, I have to create some tactical steps to get to that place, but I also have to overcome the stories around money and the transparency around money. So a little bit about my background when it comes to finances and the way that my wife and I have shared finances in the past is that I have always been an elite performer in production pretty much since the beginning of our relationship. And production has never been really an issue for me up until the point when I decided to take this leap and start this business and got to the point where I couldn't ever outsell my desires or my problems because I was reliant on building a team and I had to rely on more than just myself. And this has been a very challenging growth process and has produced an immense amount of fear because I couldn't outsell my problems. But in the past, before I started this business, my stories around money were basically I was the producer and my wife could have whatever she wanted because financially that was how I was showing up. And it hid a lot of my insecurities around production and how much I was counting on my production to make me feel like a man. And I was very one-dimensional in that experience, and I've talked about that in the past. So as being in the place that I'm in now, almost 4 years into building a business and a lot of pain that's come from that, there's been a lot of growth, but I'm still not financially in the place where I want to be for a take-home perspective for my family. So I started diving deeper into why is it that I have so much fear around combining our finances, sitting down with my wife, and changing the way that we structure our finances to give her the security that she desires and ultimately I desire, because the more secure my wife feels and the safer my wife feels, the deeper our level of trust and connection and vulnerability grows. And ultimately that leads to what I want, which is a deeper connection with my wife. So the first thing I did, which is to stack my stories around money, and I've shared this concept of stack before in the past, That's not what I'm going to go into now, but I want to share what the original story was, which is part of my stack process around, my first attempt at dealing with how I'm feeling about money and combining our finances. So my original story in my stack was, Franco has been avoiding the conversation of budgeting with his wife and the combination of all of our accounts. I am afraid of losing my financial independence. I'm also feeling very exposed financially and feeling inadequate with the level of production that I have been showing up with compared to the past. I know that I am building my empire, but the current results still bring me pain, and the thought of having more transparency about my pain with my wife is triggering me right now. So that was the current story when I started my stack. And as I worked through this stack and uncovering many different fears, I realized that it's pretty deeply rooted. So I have insecurities around production. I feel less than a man when I think about the financial place that we're in. I feel like I'm letting down my family. There's guilt. There's shame. And I realized that money is an important KPI, key performance indicator. But I also realized it's not the only one to measure. And that was really only something that I started to uncover as I went through the process of the stack. And I allowed myself to be present to the pain and the fear that I'm feeling around wanting to sit down and look at the facts and create a budget and have full 100% transparency across all of our accounts and give my wife what she would need to be more secure and safe, which ultimately would give me the results of what I want, which is a deeper, transparent connection with my wife. So I'm going through this process, and I don't have this at all figured out, but I'm going to be sharing and documenting what I'm going to be doing to overcome my fears, and tactically the game that I'm going to create with my wife this quarter to give her that transparent safety and security. Some of the lessons that I have learned just in today's stack and beginning this process, though, is that fear and pain is always the gateway to expansion. So in my Origins podcast, I talked about that I went through an exercise where I was exposed financially in the beginning of my first event with Wake Up Warrior, and I sat down to actually take a look at the facts. And in that time, I was on the verge of losing my house. I wasn't making any money. I wasn't getting paid. I mean, the picture was really ugly and scary and hurt and painful, and I definitely didn't want to look at it. But from that, a cascading event, so many things happened where I made massive changes based on looking at the facts. And I don't give myself enough credit sometimes because I'm just avoiding the whole topic of money, and because there's still a lot of pain around it. But when I actually took the time to dive into that pain with my first stack about it, which is part of the process of how I'm going to overcome my fear, I realized there's some pain associated with money, but there's also a lot of excitement around money and the actual facts that currently exist in my life compared to how it was 2 years ago. So the comparison game of where or who I'm comparing myself to has also a lot to do with how I feel. When I let myself get into my ego in my head and I compare myself to maybe the level of production that I was at 5-6 years ago, there's pain that comes because I'm not yet producing at the level that I was at that time. But when I compare myself to the man that I was when I started my business and that first year and discovery of how shallow and one-dimensional of a person I was compared to the human life value that I've created over the last 2 years, I'm actually really fired up because my facts tell me a very different story. While I'm definitely making more money. I've doubled my income the last 2 years. And I'm not yet where I want to be, but some of the facts that I was really fired up about is that in the last 18 months, I went from almost a 550 credit score to I'm just knocking on the door of 800 credit score. I am virtually debt-free. I moved into a new home. My business has grown every year over the last 3 years. We've implemented systems, processes, and there's so many other key performance indicators, happiness in my life, where my family's at, the depth of connection with my wife, and many other great things around money and accomplishments that have been made. But when I don't allow myself to actually focus on the facts and I get trapped in my feelings, the one place that I always focus on when I'm only focused on feelings as it relates to money is what I don't feel good enough about. So the process of actually diving into it allowed me, and that's part of the stack as well, it says, what are the facts? And when I actually started to account for all of the facts around finances in my life, the picture wasn't as bad as I was feeling when I started with that original story that I shared with you guys. So my discovery is that the facts are always what's most important for me to focus on. And while there is pain associated, and I'm working through the stories, and I'm going to continually attack these stories around why I associate production so much with feeling less than a man, I also recognize that when I dive into these stories, there's a lot of opportunity, and all of my expansion comes from having the courage to deal with my pain and my fear. So from this process, I know that I'm going to grow as a person, as a man, but my relationship is going to grow. And that's ultimately what I continue to focus on. And there's many other gifts and expansion that I'm sure I'm going to get from this process that I'll continue to share and uncover with you guys. But my ask for you from this podcast is, take a look at the facts, and that could be just going through a budget, and that in and of itself is eye-opening. Sometimes we hide and we avoid because we're afraid or we have feelings associated with the facts, and sometimes our feelings are not actually as true as we think they are. Until we actually look at the facts, though, you can't uncover how bad it really is or how not bad it is. But once you uncover the facts, then you actually have the ability to change them and to attack it. So as I uncovered the facts and realized that this is something that I'm going to tackle, I'm going to just give you guys some of the tactical approach that I'm going to be doing to create this new game in this quarter 4. So the first thing is that I'm going to be reviewing the budget that my wife created weeks ago that I didn't even look at because of the pain and the fear. I'm going to make sure that the information is accurate and that I'm taking a look at all of my accounts. I set up a Mint account so that I can have transparency across all my accounts. And I'm going to set up my first budget meeting with my wife to review and make sure that all the information first is accurate, that we have all the facts. Then we're going to create a process where we're both going to get really clear on where it is that we want to go financially. And we're going to implement some checkpoints, and we're going to have a monthly meeting. And I am committing to myself to review my finances and budgets as part of my weekly plan every single week. So that's tactically how I'm going to go after this. But also emotionally, I'm going to continue to tackle my stories around the fear of finances, and more importantly, sharing these finances and allowing myself to be exposed with my wife. And how that makes me feel, so that I'm attacking it from a strategic, emotional standpoint, as well as a tactical standpoint that gives my wife the opportunity to get the safety and security that she's looking for, which also leads to what I want at the end of the day, which is a deeper connection with my wife, and also the help that we're working together towards creating the vision that we both want. So take the time to create a budget, and if you have a budget, take a look at it and share it with your partner if you have one, or somebody else in your life that can give you a different perspective. And if you feel exposed or you feel like there's fear or pain around your finances, know that you're not alone, but also know that that's probably your biggest opportunity for expansion in your business. So hope this message found some value for you. And as always, I ask, please rate and review the show. Share this message with somebody that you think would gain value from the show. And I appreciate the opportunity to share this message with you and connect through the Honest Liar podcast, a conversation around finding the inner liar within all of us and leveraging the truth to create expansion across all areas of our lives. Have a wonderful day, everyone.